And we are back with another really cold, unfortunately cold, snowy episode of Mess to Mission. And today I have Kimberly Green Warren, and I'm super excited because this is like a very interesting topic to me where strategy meets creativity. So, as somebody who thrives mainly on strategy, I like to hear a little bit of the crisscross. So, Kimberly, thank you so much for being here today and tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me. As you mentioned, my name's Kimberly Green Warren, and I am a training consultant where I see the strategy as well as a calligrapher where I really lean into my creativity to ultimately design experiences that allow people to connect to themselves or a topic. By background, I have a public health background, so I'm very passionate about public health. And just the health and well-being of us as individually and collectively. And so that's where I primarily work with public health and healthcare organizations to design learning experiences that I say stick. And then as a calligrapher, I work with organizations such as retail brands to do kind of brand activations at their stores to personalize gifts for folks. And then I also work with organizations to design workshops to teach modern calligraphy as a mindfulness tool that you can use to slow down and connect and create with yourself. And then I also have a product that I recently created called the Everyday Lettering Box for women or anyone in general who is just wants to slow down, connect with their creativity, learn something new. And so that's something that folks can do on their own at their own time. And if they've ever wanted to learn calligraphy.
I love that. Okay, that's a lot to unpack. So we're going to go back to the beginning because, well, one, I don't know that I could do calligraphy to save my life. So we'll unpack that in a minute. But coming from a public health and kind of having the strategy mixed with the creativity, what's your mess to mission story? Like, how did you find that those two things were what lit you up or kind of get to where you are today?
Honestly, I do not think I ever thought they would ever be connected. So I've like I said, I have a public health background. I've always been interested in public health and obviously always been passionate about public health. And just like I said, the health and well-being of individuals and communities. And so that's pretty much where my career trajectory took me. I got an undergraduate, a master's in public health, specifically health education and pretty much went up the totem pole that most folks typically do, very linear, get into a corporation where you're able to develop programs, develop health education initiatives. And then I think we all reach a point, as most people do, where you're like, is this it? You know,
Yes, yes. I
this
got to
it?
the top and there's nothing else here.
Yeah. And, I'm a millennial. So, I full transparency. It's like I reached midway and I was like, so I'm going to do this for however many years more, and it's going to be rinse
Hmm.
repeat. Right? And, I reached a place where I was like, there has to be something more. Enter COVID.
Always, always enter COVID for the millennials.
Enter COVID, right? And like most people, I don't think I'm different than anybody else. It dramatically shifted one's perspective on everything, right? What we knew, what we did with our lives, where we want to go, what we can and can't do, right? And so with COVID, I leaned into calligraphy because I've always had decent handwriting, even though you don't need good handwriting to do calligraphy, because calligraphy is closer to drawing than it is handwriting. But I leaned into calligraphy because people used to always ask me to do their wedding invitations, and it's because of my handwriting. And so I said, okay, if I'm
Oh,
at home and I'm kind of like, going through the anxiety of COVID, let me at least like learn and lean into a creative hobby that I've been wanting to explore. And that was calligraphy. So I taught myself calligraphy, fell in love with it, and it's been a part of me ever since. I tell people all the time, like, I chose public health, but calligraphy chose me because it just felt like something that it's always something I was supposed to do. But calligraphy has helped me ultimately slow down because it's an art form that you have to do slowly. And it's something that allows me to express my creativity. So I find myself, I oftentimes letter quotes because any great quote that I see, I'm like, okay, let me reflect on it. And so
yeah.
I just do it slowly. And so that's kind of where it falls into kind of like my practice. But I will say, like, in terms of like my mess to mission, I've always had these kind of like separate interests. And I should have spelled this along. I ultimately started my own consulting practice after I decided there should be more. And
Yeah.
so I started my own consulting practice to do health education work. That's also simplifying everything. But that's what I ended up doing. And so I've really been focused on my consulting practice for the last this will be my 3rd year in 2026 doing it full time. So, really focused on that, and it was only last year, we're filming this in 2025, but 2024 is when I realized, "Hey, maybe there's an intersection between health and, creativity." Because I know what calligraphy has done for me in terms of my mindfulness, because obviously I explored this during COVID, during a really difficult time. I know it does for me in terms of slowing me down and disconnecting from screens. I wonder if there's an opportunity to embed this in a health initiative, and that's when I've been exploring, and I've delivered a couple of workshops to health professionals. They've loved it for the same exact thing, just the opportunity to
Yes.
are mindful, to slow down, learn a new creative hobby that's very accessible, and so that's kind of how I've merged it. But it's only been merged from simply my curiosity, and also leaning into what I know works for me, and maybe it can work for one other person. But I don't think I ever had an idea that they could be merged, but it definitely works.
I love that. So I think about so many things about like, going back, I worked for a corporation
Mhm,
for Marriott International where like you climb the chain, you climb the chain, you climb the chain, and then you get to the top and you're like, the chain is more responsibility, more headaches.
mhm,
Great, it does come with the money, but it's not
mhm,
ideal. But then you kind of lose yourself in all of that strategy. And what we forget, I think often more times than not, is like when you're a little kid, you love to draw, you love to play, you love to have all these creative outlets. And somewhere along the way, it's like you kind of get that either beat out of you or
mhm,
just the world makes you hardened, and it's
yeah,
so interesting to me to find that with an overlap in public health. My husband's in public health. So, yes. So, well, he's a public health servant, I suppose. So, he's a
yeah,
fireman, but he's also
yeah,
crossed with like
yeah, of course.
seeing all of that. And it's a
Yeah,
very interesting mindset to me because if I was to be like, hey, let's draw, let's play, let's color,
mhm,
like, I don't know
mhm.
that that would necessarily stick in his wheelhouse, but I've seen it so many times kind of prevent that burnout or allow people to go back to that slowing down space.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about kind of just that, like even the workshops you're doing or how you thought to even put those things together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to piggyback really quickly off what you said. I didn't mention motherhood. Motherhood also dramatically pushed me in this direction because
Yes.
when you are able to see your child play with any object that you have in a house, a cardboard box, right? And a cardboard box can be a house, it can be a car, it can be something that should be colored on, it can
It
be
could be a
something
fort.
it could be a fort, right? When you see the innate level of creativity that we all have from a very young age, you realize very quickly that it was lost in adulthood. It's not something that you ever had
Mhm.
to build. It's not something that you have to go seek. You were naturally creative when you were born. It's only through adulthood that we lose that because we believe that there's only one way to be. And whenever I define creativity for people, I say make something new. So not I didn't mention paint and you have to grade it like watercolor or like you need to go become the next like Taylor Swift, right? I literally
Yeah.
said to make something new. That is the essence of creativity. And I believe it's like a tool that we all have access to, but we fail to realize that it's a muscle that we all have. And so the way that I bring that to workshops in particular is to help folks explore their creativity. And so I use calligraphy just as a analogy or a tool, right? Because it's simple and it's something that people can pick up on very quickly. But it's something that I see as an analogy for creativity because it's also something that you don't need to be perfect at, right? Which I know you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
I could never do it.
Yes.
Love that calligraphy is something that looks perfect to people, but you don't realize that like we all have to start in an imperfect place, right? In order to learn calligraphy. And it's also something where it allows you to really just like explore your creativity. So some people may, like I said, I like quotes. Some people really like, wedding. That's where most people go whenever they think of calligraphy first, or just like fancy invitations or things like that, right? There's just various forms that people personalize.
Yeah,
People
my oldest is really into the Bible journaling. So, like,
Mhm.
she has one of those Bibles and then she journals like all of the everything that she wants to write. Her handwriting is far superior to mine, but
Yeah,
that's been a really good creative outlet for her to kind
exactly.
of utilize that as a tool.
Exactly. So it's just whatever folks have a natural curiosity for, you'd be surprised how much just learning how to letter allows you to just explore that even further, right?
Yeah.
And so with my workshops, that's kind of just what I do. And I've tried to make them as simple as possible. So a lot of folks are like, okay, I learned calligraphy, but like, what am I supposed to do with this? So everything that I do is teach people how to write one word. So by the end of the workshop, you just know how to write one word in calligraphy, right? And you can practice that if you want to explore it further. I obviously have opportunities for people to do that, but just something to people to get comfortable with being imperfect, get comfortable with the messiness that's required for you to be creative, but also know that regardless of what, if it's imperfect, perfect, whatever, you're still creating something new. You're still allowing yourself to lean into your creative energy. And then also it allows you to slow down and disconnect from screens.
Yeah. Do you think that you've ever had anybody like do you find people that often are hesitant to it or like they're worried about it not being perfect or,
Yes.
they think I can't do this just right
Mhm.
off the bat? Like obviously I'd be willing to try. It would have to be an acquired skill, but I think it would be interesting to me to know about people who are resistant to it because they struggle with that creativity or they feel like they're resistant to it even though like it's been innate, like, at one
Mhm.
point, that was part of their childhood.
Yeah, for sure. The mantra that I use to kind of kick off everything, and it's a part of like everything that I do with my calligraphy workshop is like I'm here to practice, not be perfect. That's what I start with. And so that's how I ground everything is I'm here to practice, not be perfect. That's how I see that. I see that apply to life. I see that apply to creativity. I see that applying to any goal, aspiration, whatever it is that you want for your life. Everything growth is through iteration. It's not through getting it right, and it's not something that like once you reach the destination you're done. So I see it as a way to like help people ground like I'm here to practice, not be perfect. And so I will say I volunteered with a woman, like a girls middle school in my area, and I've taught them calligraphy. I've also taught like many professionals and adults calligraphy. The funniest thing is when I taught the young girls, one of them came up to me and said, "Miss Kimberly, thank you, but this is not for me." Right? And I said, I welcome that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Me, because
Yeah.
I also want people, right? I tell people all the time, calligraphy is not the end
Middle
all.
school well, middle schoolers don't hold back. They tell
They
you all that they feel, I will tell you that.
they will, and said that to me, and I said, "You know what? Thank you for telling me because I do not want anybody to feel that calligraphy is the end all be all to solve your creativity, but what I do want people to lean into is the fact that, like, this is what calligraphy's done for me. I think the essence of calligraphy that's forced people to slow down, to explore their creativity, to connect with themselves, connect with others. There's something that we can all sub in our own lives that fills that cup, and that's really the school of thought I want to share with
Y
people, right? So I'm like, you find your own calligraphy, your own tool that allows you to feel creative, for you to fill your cup. And so that's usually what I tell folks who are like, I'm not into calligraphy, but I hear what you're saying.
Yes. So it's so interesting to me because my middle child is always very, very creative. Like, she wants to design, paint, color, all of the things.
Yeah.
Even as and so we have 2 girls and a boy. So the boy is very much into, like, the building the blocks and all of the
Mhm.
things, but even when you're sit down to playing with them, I've realized how hard it was recently because we have, like, a whole Barbie world to
Mhm.
even just, like, talk as fake characters or use that
Right.
like, it's become increasingly harder in these fake scenarios, and they come up with the most, like, outlandish stuff, and it's somewhere along the way, like, where do you feel like you have people ever said, like, "This is when I really stopped being creative," or I just think
Mhm.
about my when I was little, like, I used to love to design, like, fashion books
Mhm.
for all the things, and
Mhm.
then along the way,
Yeah.
I had to grow up and get a job, and I stopped doing all the things, so, like, where do you think that maybe disconnect is?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question because I think about this a lot because I see myself today as a creative. I'm absolutely a creative if anybody was to ask me. But if you ask me before COVID, I'd say I'm not creative. I'm a public health professional. And even though I'm still a public health professional today, for sure, I think the reframe is in the fact that before COVID, I thought I could only be one thing, right? And so
Ooh,
I thought
yeah.
that one thing defined me. And since that my and mostly my work, I thought my work defined me because you're in the straight and narrow. You're just doing what people tell you you're supposed to do, and you just go up this totem pole. You need to be a good whatever. And so I think that's what I let define me. And I think it's taken me the last, what is this, 6 years to really accept that we're all multifaceted and there's multiple versions of all of us and there's no one thing that defines any of us. And so whenever I open up to the possibilities of like I'm a creative and I'm also a wife and I'm a mom and I'm a public health professional and I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a consultant and I'm a great friend and I love reality TV and all of these things, you allow everything to define you, but nothing to hold, no one thing to hold your entire identity. Right?
Yeah,
And
I
so
love that. So you are, you're leaning into all of these things and you have strategy on your side, you have creativity on
mhm,
your side. And that's,
mhm,
I feel like one time or a lot of the times, especially with like the clients that I work with, they're either one or the other. Like they're really creative. And so
mhm,
strategy and systems is hard for
mhm,
them, or they're really
mhm,
systematic. So the creative
mhm.
space is hard for them. Kind of having both sides that you're leaning into, what do you find, if anything, that you found to be a struggle in your business, or like what's one thing that you wish you would have known prior to starting your business?
Yeah, oh, no, that's great. I would say, naturally a type B kind of person. So, I think that works well for strategy and creativity because I'm not really
Yes.
I don't hold tight to anything. I'm like, "Oh, this happened, so that means I have to go this direction," or, "This happened, let's create something new from it." So, I don't really hold tight to any plan, idea, anything. I'm really go with the flow. So, I think that helps for
Yeah.
me to be able to, like, lean into both, but I will say what I'm lacking is probably, like, those type what how people thrive in type A, scenario, right?
Yeah. I'm like, but I'm over here like, gosh, I wish I could just lean into the type B more, like, girl.
Yes, no, I'm full-fledged type B, and so I will get things done, right? Obviously, you have to if you have your own business, but, like, I truly can go in so many different directions if yeah, I can go in so many different directions, but I will say that, like, yeah, I probably could benefit more from especially this stage of my business is just like systems, right? So that I'm not doing it all and just like clear systems, clear processes so that everything isn't dependent on me. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And I think that's a next step of most people. Like, you evolve, like,
Yeah.
you're able to pivot so easy, and then you can evolve into your own systems and processes and
Mhm.
delegate or kind of
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
see fit. Yeah, I was interested to ask you that question because I feel like a lot of the times it goes one or the other. It's like the systems or processes, or somebody
Mhm.
wishes that they would know more about marketing or
Yeah.
this part of their business. And so
Mhm.
having both sides of the brain, I'm like, "Ooh, I wonder which one she's gonna lean
Yeah.
towards."
Yeah, and also to answer your question too, like, what I wish I would have known, it kinda goes back to, like, probably what I've said this entire podcast, it's just your willingness to try and your willingness to fail, like, that's the biggest thing, like, you can't I feel like someone should told me, like, "You will never be able to mastermind your way to success." Like, not, like, just crafting one plan, executing it to the nth degree, which kind of is what corporate feels like when you have a job, you're given a
Yes.
task as long as you execute it to the nth degree, you'll have pretty much a positive product. But I think with entrepreneurship and having your own business, your willingness to try and your willingness to iterate and pivot actually contributes to the most growth that you can make in your business. So I think just being willing to try and knowing that you're not going to be able to mastermind it.
I think I need to, like, get one of those T-shirts with, like, Ross from Friends. It's like pivot and then sell those to, like, every
Mhm.
client that is,
Yeah.
because it's so true. Like, everybody
Mhm.
says that. But it's not a one size fits all. Like, what
Mhm.
works in my business, in my brain, it
Mhm.
might be different
Yeah.
from what works in your business,
Yeah.
in your brain. And I think that especially coming from the corporate world, you are sold that pathway, that
Mhm.
everything needs to go like this, everything needs to be
Mhm.
structured like this. And then when you jump into entrepreneurship, you're like, that doesn't work here.
Or
That's
yeah.
not how I want things to be executed.
Yeah, it's for sure. It's like, yeah, you can't mastermind it like that. You have to get feedback from people you're selling to, right? Like I tell people that all the time. Your market will tell you what they need, right?
Yes.
So, you can't force people to buy something that you just want to sell, right? It has to fill a gap that people need, and I think that's probably, like, one of the biggest reasons why entrepreneurship forces you to pivot the way that it does, is because it's more reliant on that exchange of value for money, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's you can be that somebody said, I think it was John like a couple episodes ago, but it's like you
Mhm.
can be passionate about it and you can want to sell it, but you also have to make sure in entrepreneurship that you make it profitable. And I feel like
Exactly.
that is like a whole other self journey and so of like
Yeah.
figuring out all of the strategy to price the things so you can afford groceries and
You
whatnot.
agree, great, yes, absolutely.
Do you feel tell me a little bit about how you're kind of combining the calligraphy specifically with the public health space, though? Like,
Mhm.
are you just finding it that those are the people that need to kind of tap in more to that creative space, or is there like more strategy in it? Just because I was thinking, like, firemen in general are making me like smile here when I think about this because I just imagine all of them trying to tap into this like personal space of creativity, but how does that kind of overlap look for you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I started with public health professionals because that's just like the space that I knew the most. But I think kind of through this conversation, I think what I probably realized is people who need it the most are people who feel most what's the best way to phrase this? Who feel most stuck in a linear path, right?
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And so I think that can go across like professions. But I think for something like public health, probably very similar to medicine, probably very similar to like, I don't know, like law or business, you have a little bit more flexibility. But, when you're in certain fields, you feel like, okay, I started it. So this is like where I need to finish it, right? You don't really feel like
Yes.
you have a lot of leeway to, okay, public health intersects with everything, right? But like once you start like a public health degree and also your master's, you're kind of fed into this pipeline of like going to CDC, working for the NIH, like working for the federal government, like working for state health departments. So it feels very linear. And so there's nothing wrong with that, and obviously it's very much needed. It's just the fact that I understand and can empathize when you're on that track, how much you feel like you can't explore various branches of it. You feel like there's
Yeah.
one way to go about it, and so that's where, the creativity side of me has, like, come in is because I believe that creativity looks like how you solve problems, how you brainstorm new innovations or opportunities, how you make something new, and all of that is still accessible even if you're on this linear track. So, I think it's a tool that we can add to our toolbox, even if we're on this track, that can
Yeah.
still help us tap into that creative energy that I think we all have. And so, yeah, so that's kind of like how I see it merge. It's just I think it's best suited for workshops that I deliver. I think it's best suited for anyone that feels like they're in this track, this single track. And then also folks who could just benefit from a little bit more mindfulness and tapping into creative energy that's not an innate part of their jobs or their roles or their day to day lives.
I think there's also a big value piece of it filling your cup, like
Mhm,
surprisingly filling your cup, like
mhm, mhm,
bringing you back to either a core memory or something you did in your childhood. And that is undervalued because after I do it's a headache even as if mom, you're getting out the
mhm,
paint, you're doing all the
mhm,
things
yeah,
and all of that. But like once it's all done,
mhm,
it's like very fulfilling to have
mhm,
that time where you're not
mhm,
working, you're not focused
mhm,
on
mhm.
your cell
Whatever.
phone
Yeah.
or the stresses of life because you're more in that moment, kind of with that free flowing capability to do or create something. Middle child has tried to learn crocheting. We're not really succeeding, but we're really trying. But just to see how that kind of
Mhm,
inspires or create, or even piano, like
mhm,
music, things like
mhm,
that. I think there's such a
mhm.
lost love and appreciation for allowing those tracks to continue.
Absolutely. There's so many creative activities that help fill your cup, and I think sometimes people also underestimate just like the arts in general. Like, look how many people during, the holiday season, you want to go see a holiday play, right? Or you want to listen to holiday
Yes.
music. All of those things bring back those feel good feelings that make us feel better. Right. And so it's kind of that same thing. It's like even if you want to turn on Netflix or whatever before you go to sleep at night because you want to disconnect, that's an art form. It's kind of the same kind of premise here. It's just that the arts in general slash creativity can fill your cup in a very certain way that gives you those feel good feelings that either makes you more mindful and allows you to just be more creative in general. So, yeah, that's why I feel so passionate.
I love that. Well, if people want to connect with you further and learn more about your calligraphy and all the amazing things that you are doing, your business or even the consulting, how can they connect with you and kind of watch your journey evolve or learn more about this creative space?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first for my calligraphy business, you can find me at Lettered by Lola on Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook, and that's where you can pretty much follow my calligraphy journey, what I'm up to. And also, as I said, I use calligraphy kind of as my creative outlet. So you'll find several quotes there that I just do on a day-to-day basis just to slow me down and connect. And then for my consulting practice, where I work with public health professionals as well as healthcare organizations to design learning experiences for curricular development or meeting facilitation. You can find me on LinkedIn, and that's under Smart Health Education, and or my LinkedIn, Kimberly Green Warren. And I should have also mentioned both of my websites. So letterbylola.com or smarthealtheducation.com.
I love it. When strategy and creativity combine, like I am adoring this because it's such a two-sided situation here. But Kimberly, thank you so much for being here. And I can't wait to drop everything down in the show notes and have people follow along with your journey. But thank you for telling us about your mess to mission story.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.